Hello and welcome to the first episode of the New Era podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to the incredible world of women's sport business, where we shine a spotlight on the inspiring stories, the latest news, and amazing individuals shaping the future of women in sports and women's sport. You may have followed us from the Sports Pro podcast, where we've done a few takeover episodes over the years, but we thought it was about time that we branched out, spread our wings, and launched our own show.
That's right. So whether it's athletes, business professionals, or allies supporting this movement, we're here to amplify their voices and explore the big ideas shaping this space. But before we dive into all of that, we thought we'd use this first episode to just introduce ourselves and to give you a little sneak peek about what to expect from New Era.
So, with that being said, we probably should actually introduce ourselves. Thanks, Elena. I'm Katie, head of projects at Sports Pro. I'm going to mention this straight away to publicly hold myself accountable, but I'm hopefully also a soon-to-be high rocks athlete if I ever actually book one. I think all my friends and family are going to be already getting very tired of me talking about that as one of my 2025 goals, and it's only the 17th of January currently. There'll probably be many an eye roll listening to that, but here we go anyway. Maybe that could be a monthly check-in for us, Elena, we'll see. But the more I speak about it, I feel like the more I'm going to manifest it into existence. So we'll see how that goes. But aside from that, I have always been a bit of a sports fanatic, whether that be playing any sport you can imagine as a kid, all the way through to studying both the science and business side of the sport at university, for both my undergrad and postgrad, and then kind of into my career where I am today. I'm going to pass the same question over to you, Elena, but also feel free to share any potentially embarrassing 2025 goals if they don't actually happen.
Amazing. Well, I think I will take you up on that, and we will be doing a little check-in to see how your training is going, where you're traveling for High Rocks.
Yeah, take it back already, yeah.
But I do agree, saying things out loud does definitely help to manifest things and stick to your goals and so on. I don't think I've made such a goal that I can say out loud as of now, but maybe, January is not the only time to set goals, so we'll be here for that along the way. I am content executive at Sports Pro, but as you mentioned, similar to you, my kind of interest in sports started way back when I was really young. I grew up in Greece, where soccer or football, whatever people like to call it, is not a big thing for girls. But that's a sport I grew up to love. And I will give a little shout out to one of my coaches who was the one who introduced this to me. We never had a women's or girls team, but, I love the sport, and he used to take me to all the boys training and everything. And I was just involved. And then when I was in year 4, we actually set up a girls team. But one of my earliest memories is going to a football pitch close to my house with a little ball and my football shoes on, going up to little boys and asking them, can I please play with you? And no one wanted me on the team until I was on their side, started scoring goals, and then they knew and I was on their team always.
Oh yeah. Show them how it's done.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this really relates to kind of stuff we do talk about New Era in terms of like the barriers women face, not only in, sporting participation, but also in the sports industry. And I do think it is a lot about like putting yourself out there. And I think when we're young, you kind of don't overthink it too much. Like when I think that I used to do that, I feel quite brave. And now I think there's times that I would not do this at this day and age. So I need to get a little inspiration from little me. But yeah, then when kind of I saw that, this sort of football career thing wouldn't, work out to be one of the big names. So then I said, okay, then what's the other way we can be involved in sport? And that was through studying sports science initially, and then went into sports management. And here we are today. Curb, I know you have a similar kind of background in terms of studies, and it's great to kind of put all this together. But, I'd love to hear kind of what excites you, Katie, in terms of, the New Era program. And without giving too much away, I know we've got a lot of interesting conversations coming up in the next month. So I'd love to hear what excites you most.
Yeah, 100%. I should probably start by explaining what New Era currently means to me and you and everyone else at Sports Pro. We actually launched New Era about 3 years ago, I think it is now. It's both a global community for women and non-binary executives working in sport, as well as a more focused coaching and spotlighting program for a select number following an application process. So The program itself sees around 14 women be coached throughout a 12-month period by some of the most inspiring and trailblazing women in the industry, as well as be given opportunities to engage with us here at Sports Pro, whether that be by writing thought leadership content for our website, joining us on stage at our international events, or even joining us here on this podcast, hopefully, in the next few months. We're in our third year of the program now, and are always pleasantly overwhelmed each year by the amount of applications we receive, which ultimately led to us launching the wider community, which connects around, I think it's about 1,500 women now across the world, through our virtual and in-person events and monthly editorial stuff as well, content. So given all of that, I think what excites me the most is that we now have this platform to further amplify the amazing people working to grow women's sport, as well as those that are women in sport, whilst also having the opportunity to spotlight great work that organisations are doing in this space too. As Elena just said, we're going to be joined by some fascinating and incredibly inspiring people who will each have different perspectives on this topic and be able to share tips and tricks on how we can truly keep pushing to make long-lasting change. But for me also, from a more personal perspective, I love hearing people's stories and where they've come from and where they're going. And I would hope that those insights in various backgrounds can continue to not only inspire myself, but also those that are tuning in and listening as well. So I'm going to throw that straight back to you, Elena, and also ask why you think now it's the perfect time for us to be talking about this and launching the podcast.
Yes, as you mentioned, there's a lot of amazing people involved in New Era, past alumni, this current class, steering group members, and just generally people who support this initiative that we've launched. And I think, as you said, like being able to hear people's stories, maybe in a more casual format, be able to tap into their experience, their knowledge, their life advice, because oftentimes we see that, we relate on so many different levels from conversations we've had. For our listeners, for those who are in the New Era community, we have monthly webinars where we deep dive into conversations that either affect women on a personal front or in terms of, sports business. And oftentimes a lot of interesting conversations have been sparked and raised there. And I think I often come off of those calls and feel like I relate on so many levels with women who are in quite senior positions that you think are unattainable, but actually there's so many common denominators there. So I think this is a perfect time for us, as we've grown as a community, as we've grown in terms of our purpose and the allies on board that we have, to be able to expand. This is a global platform that we can use and amplify our voices. So I think, women's sport is on a crazy trajectory right now. So I think there's no better time than for us to tap into this. And I know we're very early, in 2025, as you said, Katie, we're making goals. We're seeing, as I said, women's sports making bounds and leaps. But I think I'd love to hear your predictions for what women's sport or women's sports business has on hold for this year.
My first predictions of the year is around women's sports and how I think it will surpass men's in terms of viewer engagement on short form platforms. So I think women's sports content will generate higher engagement rates than men's on platforms like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, completely driven by Gen Z and Gen Alpha's appetite for relatable, authentic and inspiring stories. And studies are already showing that younger audiences gravitate towards women's sports for storytelling and value-based content. And we're seeing athletes like Elena, who's a household name now following the Paris Olympics and known for her body positivity content, and Sedona Prince, who's a basketball player at the University of Oregon and who actually blew up back in 2021 when she exposed the inequities between the women's and men's workout facilities during the NCAA tournament. We're also seeing Simone Biles, another household name. She garnered 600 million total video views and was the 6th most viewed TikTok account using the hashtag Olympics last year, beating media outlets like Daily Mail and ESPN. So players on top of that also now have digital rights to show their own highlight clips on social media channels. And they're basically being given this unprecedented opportunity to build their own brand and attract commercial opportunities, of which we're already seeing. And I'm sure we'll get into at the end when we do our sort of news wrap up, Elena. But Alongside that, we're obviously seeing the likes of TikTok partner with women's sports leagues like the NWSL and FIFA World Cup to boost online and wider audience engagement through algorithms and so on. I suspect this will not only continue, if not even be more prominent this year, whether across TikTok or other platforms, with some major tournaments as well coming up in leagues this year, such as the HSBC Women's World Championship Golf, the new Netball Super League in the UK, which I, for one, am very excited about and will probably mention many a time in this podcast, as well as obviously the WNBA, who arguably are already leading the way. So that is my first prediction. I can go straight into my second one because it kind of links, I don't know, stretching a little bit there, but I will go straight into it. The second one is around women's health in sport. So yeah, stick with me and I'll try and come back full circle. We all know basically that scientific research and studies historically have used male athletes, which has in turn meant that women are playing with ill-fitted equipment. There's been neglect on how menstrual cycles affect performance and so on. And soccer has started to lead the way, with UEFA assembling a team to study the prevalence of ACL injuries in women's soccer and the effect of menstrual cycles on their performance, for example. We're also seeing investment into women's health from basically women at the top, such as Michelle Kang and her $50 million investment and commitment into women's health research, as well as her investment into Ida Sports, who produce soccer boots for women and tailored to women. So not only do I think the research into women athletes and women's health will continue to grow, but I also think because of the science-based research that we will eventually see be put into practice, we'll then see this enhanced performance on the pitch, on the court, on the track, wherever else, that will further and boost viewership, engagement, and ultimately, hopefully, the entertainment around it. So that, I don't know if that's a bit of a stretch. I think I've come back full circle in one way or another. But those are my two predictions for 2025.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely have come full circle. And I think it does show our background in sports science right there. But, sport is an ecosystem. It, has a knock-on effect on things. So I really like your predictions. And I think, there is a lot of room for improvement in all kind of fields. And I think now that you are kind of on the front of soccer that you finished off there, I'd like to share kind of my predictions for this year. And I think it is an optimistic one, but I would love to see women's soccer in the UK find a dedicated kickoff time under the newly formed WPLL for 2025. I think, with having a dedicated time slot, this will foster kind of a more habitual viewership. It will allow for sustained growth. Fans will know exactly where and when to watch. Broadcasters can also optimize their schedules. You'll be able to have more brand deals and sponsorships with, a clear platform where, not only women, but generally fans of women's sport can see, and, brands can start amplifying their message. I think there's been a lot of conversation about, how big women's soccer is in the UK specifically, and how there's not a specific time slot, with mixed up schedules and, with men's fixtures and so on. So I would love to see that happen. I know, the WPLL has big visions and ambitions for, women's soccer, but, I think this would be game changing truly. And moving on to my second prediction, I think, you mentioned Elena Mar. I think she has now stepped into the UK. She's making, waves in terms of huge numbers. I think there was 9,240 people that turned up to her, first Bristol Bears debut. She just had a press conference, and I think that's the only time there's been a press conference where there's just one athlete there, no coaches, no other athletes, and nothing. And that says a lot about who this person is. And I think she's definitely going to grow the game for women's rugby in the UK. But, globally, we've already seen, her effect, as you mentioned, body positivity, women who wear makeup. Now you see so many brands who do support, we've got Unrivaled kicking off now with Sephora partnering with them. We've got, the Toronto Tempo again, Sephora partnered with them. You see big beauty brands which are partnering either with sport organizations or athletes. And, Elena Mar is known for that big bold red lip, and I love seeing her play with that. I'm expecting Elena Mar to have a big brand deal. I don't think we've seen her get a brand deal of what she's deserving, given her reach, the way she promotes stuff in such a genuine and cool way. A lot of these US athletes like Angel Reese, Livy Dunn, they're all athletes which have grown their brand and their fan engagement and their sport, I will say, their sport as well, because of platforms like TikTok. I think just to wrap up there, number one, have a dedicated kickoff time for women's soccer in the UK. And then number two, a big brand deal for Elena.
Love the predictions. And I guess in 12 months' time, we'll see if they happened. We will circle back. Maybe we'll clip this little part of the pod and replay it and then react live or something.
Yeah, I like that idea.
We'll see how far off we are. But before we sign off, we wanted to give you some of the facts rather than just our predictions and guesses for the year to come, and basically highlight just how exciting 2025 has already been for women's football business. So Eleanor, I don't know if you want to start and give us a bit of a roundup of the biggest headlines.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I briefly touched on this, but I think I do want to put this out there in its little, news wrap section. Obviously, Elena Mar stepped foot in the UK and, has already shocked in terms of her influence and the appeal she has for fans all over. That 9,240 people that got there was not just a record for Bristol Bears, but it was a record for the Premiership Women's Rugby as a standalone record itself. So, I definitely think, that's something we should keep our eyes peeled out for. I know they've got more games coming up. Elena Mar will only be in the UK for a few months if that contract isn't extended. So, I definitely think we have to see what's going to be happening there in terms of fan engagement.
For sure. And how about the launch of Unrivaled, the 3x3 basketball league? We've already tipped off when this is live, but I'm sure it'll be a huge success given the backing of high-profile athletes and investors. You've probably already seen that Coco Gauff was one of the latest athletes to join the likes of Juju Watkins, Phelps and Alex Morgan, just to name a few who have invested in this new league.
Yeah, there's a lot of investment behind Unrivaled. I'm really excited. The first match going tonight, actually, that we're recording is between the Miss and the Lunar Owls. Love the names. You can check. There's like roses and vinyl and laces and different cool team names there. And, so the people you mentioned in terms of the athletes backing, the whole investment in seeding rounds accumulated $35 million, which is a big sum of money. And also it's a really exciting time because, for those who don't know, Unrivaled was created in order to offer WNBA athletes the opportunity to earn and play domestically during their off-season. And the average salary of $222,000, if I'm not mistaken, means that it is the highest average salary of any women's professional sport in the US, which is a big deal. And a lot of people are saying, are they trying to compete with the WNBA? So there's a lot of, conversation and speculation around that. But what I do want to emphasize is the big names, as you mentioned, Katie, in terms of backing this new 3v3 basketball league, but also the partners they have on board. There's Under Armour, Sephora, Icy Hot. These are the ones, Wilson, big brand names supporting this move. And to what I mentioned earlier, Sephora is a well-known beauty and cosmetics brand. And we can see that they've, already made moves in terms of, their backing Unrivaled. They've recently supported and partnered with Toronto Tempo. That's their first partnership for the Canadian WNBA team ahead of its debut in 2026. So I think there's a lot we can expect in terms of women's basketball this year.
Yeah, for sure. And linked to that, and also because we can't talk sport without mentioning again soccer and women's soccer, but Denver recently securing an NWSL expansion team for a record of 110 million USD. So along that same vein, I think it's really exciting. But also, linked back to the sort of athletes that are really engaging with these new leagues and whatever else. I think it's really cool to see they're huge names. They have such influence across the industry and with their audiences. And then it's not just women as well that we're seeing investing in these, which I think is obviously important to note in terms of allyship. I just think it's going to be a really exciting year.
Yeah, we're definitely on a strong start for 2025 and I'll be excited for us to give you our views and opinions. We'll make sure to have a little dedicated time for a news wrap up at the end of all these New Era episodes.
For sure. Now, if all we've discussed sounds interesting, or someone who would love to hear more, subscribe to Sports Pro New Era, where you can become a member of our growing community, and make sure to tune in to our next episode. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.